Welcome to the Artisan and Reenactors Market podcast. This is a chance to hear from the merchants, makers, living history experts and performers who are part of the ARM family. Hear them talk passionately about their products and history. The ARM family welcomes new traders, groups, living history and performers. See our website armarket.uk to find out more. In this episode, we first hear from Caroline at Pario Gallico, Archaeological Educator, Iron Age and Tudor Living History Specialist and Historical Speaker at museums and via Zoom. We also hear from one of the Artisan and Reenactors Market's founding members, Georgina, together with her mum, Lindsey, has founded the multi-period Tastes Through Time, delivering food and living history demonstrations at living history festivals and museums. I'm joined now by Caroline from Pario Gallico, Archaeology Educator and Iron Age Living History Specialist. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good.
I specialize on the Iron Age, mainly because I'm French, I come from Eastern France, and in France, the Gauls and the Iron Age is everywhere. Everybody knows it really well. Not that we know everything about it at all, but everybody thinks they know it very well. So that has been done and redone. But arriving in Britain, where I thought it would be much more developed, suddenly I realized that no, the books that we give to schools and we gave to teachers now that the new curriculum is on to present the Iron Age and prehistory in general to the pupils have been written in the 1960s, the 70s, and very little updated. So we'll bring back, love for the Iron Age and hopefully a bit more new discoveries.
I mean, my main view of France in the Iron Age, I guess, has some kind of bearing in Asterix. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, I was hoping you knew. Honestly, Asterix and Obelix is brilliant. I didn't start liking the Iron Age because of it. I just always read it, and I've bought the new ones, obviously. But I discovered in Britain that a lot of people and a lot of kids never heard about Asterix and Obelix.
Wow.
And I'm shocked.
Well, who are these children? Let's help them with their problem.
So people, if you don't know about Asterix and Obelix, they are comics or books, they are cartoons, and they are also films. And I'm sure they are 3D things as well, somewhere. So yeah, they are two Gauls, but they are from Brittany. I don't know much about Brittany. I'm from the other side. And some of them are a bit, we don't actually live in round houses. We don't have druids with very long beard and mistletoe things. I mean, we don't think so, but who would know? Panoramics might be there. And and my main one is usually in France, every single school kid will think that in the Iron Age, everyone was eating rose boar every day. So that's something we base our displays on when I go to France or when I worked in French open air museums and things like that. Otherwise, Tudor, we do Tudor as well because sometimes you need a bit of spices and all these sort of things.
What have you been keeping up with during lockdown then? How's that been going for you?
Oh, weird and wonderful. More weird than wonderful, to be honest with you. So we started going a bit more online, doing video demonstrations and virtual talks and things like that for museums and historic sites. But that's just the start of it.
I've really enjoyed watching your videos and your demonstration things, especially the food.
Oh,
thank you. Comment that we tried making the marzipan. Oh,
so that was fantastic. It's beautiful.
So I've also seen you go to the Ancient Technology Centre. It's one of the places you demonstrate.
Yes, I work there a bit, and I do displays and courses usually on site as well. So I've started trying to do videos with them and for them as well. So they are developing a few online videos and programs for, well, anybody really, but school children's, even homeschooling families, etc., etc. Every time you meet somebody, and they don't have to be experts, or they just have to practice or be interested. And sometimes I learn more in 2 minutes from somebody who I never thought would know anything about a specific topic than I could learn in 2 books. It's fantastic and ridiculous at the same time.
You work a lot with natural pigments and you get really excited when you find coloured rocks. I've seen it.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's why I decided, for genuinely myself and my well-being, not too much to try to do anything with natural dyes.
Right.
Because I'm more interested in paints, and ancient paints are mineral based
Okay.
for the huge majority of them. So the big difference is that when you dye something, when you make a dye solution, you usually use plants or roots, organic materials, fruits, flowers, etc., etc., fungi, animals, and that will make the dye molecules dissolve into a solvent. Haha. So a dye is a solution which gets absorbed by the fabric. So when it dries, the dye is actually in the fabric. It colors the very material of it. Whereas for paints, it's a mix of very fine colored particles. So it's an emulsion instead of a solution. So when you paint on something, the paint will stay on top, and they are normally salts or oxides or minerals. So yes, colored rocks. Colored rocks and soil, really. So I like to play in mud instead of playing with the flowers.
So pigments from the earth then, what sort of range of colours can we get?
Do you know, it's actually quite varied. It really depends on what time period you're looking at, and or what place where you are in the world. And that's the beauty of it, because everywhere you go, you travel, you walk, or you live, you will find different geologies. So you find different rocks and different earths, which are different colors, because it's how it is. And you can make a whole different palette depending on what you find. So you start by foraging pigments, which is honestly the coolest aim for any kind of walks I have had the pleasure to do during this third
Go for
lockdown.
a walk.
It's is the best when you walk outside and you just find things like that. But you can make pigments from bones, for example, burnt
Ooh,
bones, if you
yes.
want whites or blacks or things like that. The easiest nowadays, if you don't really have a lot of nature around you for the moment, you might just walk around and find bits of old bricks or tiles.
Mhm.
It's clay that has been baked, so it's it's a mineral, it's colorful. If you grind it in pestle and mortar, you can make a paint out of it.
Oh wow, yes.
But otherwise, near the beaches for the moment, as I'm in North Dorset, so when I travel down, on some of them you can find genuinely more colors and a wide variety of them that I've ever thought I could find in Britain. I have found all the shades of yellows, golds, oranges, reds, purple, brown, green. But everybody, especially listening to somebody who's talking about the Iron Age, will go, "What about blue?"
Oh,
Ha ha
that was on
ha.
like the tip of my tongue.
Well,
Well,
this is for another talk. But if you want to make a blue paint, you need a blue mineral. So there are some types of earth that you can find on the seaside that look blue. They're not blue, mark my words, especially in Cornwall. They are not blue, but you will see them blue because it's usually a mix of yellowish sand and green earth that you find on the seashores. And put these hands together, your eye will see it blue, especially when the sun is shining. But otherwise, you can find some copper. Near copper mines, you will have quite a lot of malachite, green or blue, so they can turn in azurite for the moment, for example. So it's possible, especially around copper mining areas. But you cannot make a paint from a vegetal. So if you think you can paint an Iron Age roundhouse blue on the walls with woad, I'm so sorry to say you can't. It might taint it a little bit, but if you want to make a pigment, bear with me, if you want to make a pigment for paint out of a plant, you have to manage to color with a dye, a mineral like chalk, for example. It's possible with madder, it works really well. So you can make a madder lake. A lake is just a dye that's fixed on a white mineral. Madder lake, really good for makeup. Very mentioned around Greco-Roman world as well. I have no evidence, no mentions, no anything about that in Northwestern Europe. But technically, if you wanted to make a blue lake, you could make it with woad, but you will usually get a very, very light sort of blue or the household craft, like how to do the washing up on the living history encampment the historic way.
Go on then, yes.
Yeah, because that's something genuinely everybody would have done for many thousands of years. It's necessary, it's vital if you don't want to, well, get food poisoning, die, and things like that. But we don't see it really in living history and reenactment events. And people think it's maybe not interesting or you just don't think about it. I love it because the majority of events are in the summer. So you end up playing in a bucket of water for the majority of your afternoon, for example. Depends. And the kids love it, so you can actually get the washing up done and keep the kids busy at the same time. As long as you have a wooden tub, I usually advise 2, even if they are small ones. You can use buckets as well, but 2 wooden tubs, a good scrubbing brush, and just a wooden, you can find them in garden centers actually now. But organic fibers brushes usually use cloth, so linen, hot water, cold water, salt, or an abrasive like grass, for example, but mare's tail, that's a plant that's full of silicate that grows in England.
Yes.
You need to cut it and to dry it, and it becomes very brittle, but if you put it in water, within seconds it becomes green again, and you can use it as a scouring pad. I use salt usually, so genuinely a good brush, hot or boiling water, and salt, and you are sorted.
Salt was easily accessible
Yeah.
in Iron Age. I'm
Yeah.
imagining this big process that they'd have to go through to get it, or did they mine it, or how did it happen?
A bit of everything. I mean, Hallstatt, for example, so that's the first half of the Iron Age, Hallstatt salt mines. So it's in Austria, it's not in Britain. But there are some evidence on the continent, but also in the British Isles, of salt production on a large scale. Really, the whole kind of Celtic Europe, Iron Age Europe in general, is a civilization of salt processing and making. But even for the Romans, then the Roman world, we usually hear that the Roman soldiers were paid a salary from sal, in salt, in part salt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean that salt was expensive, because everybody is using it to preserve meat, fish, and to make fish sauce. So garum, you need salt. So Roman people don't think that salt was expensive. Romans didn't tend to use it in cooking as much, but you use it for preservation. In England, if you find towns that have a name in witch, like Droitwich, which is salt, it's not because of witches. Yeah, Norwich, that's it.
Oh my goodness. There you go.
So there should be salt producing areas, but yeah, salt all around the place. Probably too much in the diet, but if you don't want to use salt for that reason, genuinely use sand, gravel, anything that's abrasive, and you can use vinegar. I mean, in the deserts, Sahara, for example, when they want to do the washing up, they use apparently sand and lemon juice, because you have an abrasive and an acid, so everything just kills bacteria.
So food, Caroline. You like experimenting with old recipes of food.
Yeah.
First of all, is it difficult to come up with ingredients for older recipes, or do you find that you can forage for the ingredients?
Well, I'm interested mainly in Iron Age food and earlier because there are no textual references. There's nothing written about it. So when you go into Roman food, you suddenly have recipes and records and things like that. But for Iron Age, a lot of people assume that you just eat bland gruel and porridge every single day of your life, which
Right.
is yeah. When you're not in the living history, reenactment, experimental, in the history or archaeology world, people just assume that, yeah, food in history is just gruel, porridge, maybe boiled or braised meat, and maybe a fruit if you find one. That's it. And it doesn't help when you tell them, yeah, in the Iron Age, we didn't have any chocolate or coffee or tea. Sugar hasn't been invented. We don't have tomatoes or corn or courgettes or anything that comes from the Americas. Oh my God, but how were you living? That's always but fun and complicated at the same time. So I have to, so one has to look at the archaeology first and foremost, and then you cannot do anything else than experimenting. So you have to find what ingredients were used or were available at the time in the area and the season, and what utensils the archaeology can give you information about. So cooking pots, well, weirdly enough, 0 frying pans. It doesn't exist before the Roman arrival in Britain. So Vikings and Saxons, yay, you can make pancakes. Me? No. Yeah, that's mainly experimenting with what you can do with these ingredients, these utensils over an open fire, and then compare with other time periods, ethnography, ethnoarchaeology, what people are doing in remote places in the world in the 21st century. I really enjoy experimenting with cooking techniques, and the weirdest and most wonderful things are the best. Can I cook a joint of meat in a pit in the ground? I mean, many people do that, but it's amazing to do it.
Yes.
Boiling something in a pot over a fire, you don't realize how cool it is until you do it the first time, and every time you see somebody doing it for the first time as well. On my courses, when somebody is just so excited because something is bubbling in a pot, it's endless. How did people cook when they were traveling, for example? If you're a merchant or if you're on a hike, you can't carry your cauldron, you won't have pottery pots. So can I make a cooking pot out of leather, so properly tanned leather, or rawhide? Because suspended over a fire, if you have liquid inside, then the heat from the flames transfer to the liquid so the skin doesn't burn.
Oh.
I have a lot of questions and very little answers, in essence.
And that's all part of the experimental phase of your specialism. So when you say the archaeology to find what they ate, Caroline, does it involve poop?
Oh, one can hope so. Best information. Somebody has eaten it and digested it, so it's not a question anymore. They ate it. Instead of just finding seeds and pollens and things that might be just the wide environment, that is for certain. And yes, I did visit Jorvik and I did enjoy seeing the poo.
It's funny what we enjoy in Jorvik. I liked looking at the sock, and you liked looking at
Oh
the
yeah.
poo.
So there's new analysis, scientific analysis, so isotope. So you can extract data from tiny mini bits, fragments of pottery, and know if they cooked animal fat or dairy products or anything in these pots. You don't even need actual remains anymore. At the Scottish Crannock Centre, they have found an Iron Age cherry, and I'm not talking about a cherry pip, a stone. It's the actual flesh cherry. That's crazy. The best would be Must Farm archaeology, which is late Bronze Age, so the British Pompeii, that everybody will very soon talk a lot about again. They have found intact a pot with the food inside, which was a nettle stew, and a spoon carved inside the pot.
Wow. That is incredible.
Analyze all of that. They will know exactly what these people were cooking and eating. And that can give you information, I'm guessing, about the local environment, possibly trade, and the season.
So, the Bronze Age, Pompeii, Caroline.
Yeah, I absolutely love this site, but I know virtually nothing, not enough at all, about it. So it's in Cambridgeshire, in the Cambridgeshire Fens, and in very vague essence, has been discovered a settlement that was built there in the late Bronze Age. Very nice, a few houses, round houses on stilts on a platform. So already round houses, I'm just mentioning it's not just an Iron Age thing. And it burned down very quickly after having been built. They estimated potentially about 6 months or so, not even a year after
Oh,
having been built.
gutted.
Yeah, that's really weird because I mean, to have that amount of wood, you surely need a woodland nearby or a managed woodland. That takes a lot of work and a lot of resources to burn down. So they don't know if it's an accident, if they have been attacked. The settlement was on a very important place to trade near rivers and things like that. And they have found amazing stuff, amazing artifacts. They have pushed back the oldest wooden wheel for wagons and things like that in Britain is 800 years earlier than previously thought because they
Oh,
have found one there. Um, they even found glass beads, so small glass beads for necklaces and things like that, analyzed them, and they seem to come from Syria.
oh, my word. That's amazing.
There's a lot.
So I'm going to pick up on what you said there about the distances that things have travelled, and I was thinking about it with the food and spices and other ingredients that we can't grow in England. We didn't grow in England, but we knew they would have eaten in those times. Could you give us some sort of hints on something that we might think, what? They had that?
For all the spices and spice trade in general that everybody in Britain usually associate with the Tudors, so of course the Tudor spice
Yes.
trade, etc. That spice trade was much bigger during Roman times. So the Romans were really masters of all that sort of sea travel around the Mediterranean. And you find near Hadrian's Wall, so near Scotland nowadays, at Vindolanda, some wooden tablets, Vindolanda tablets, including shopping lists, and on
Right.
some of them, for the legionaries and the, well, maybe quite the higher echelons as well, and the families. And you have mentioned black pepper, but that comes from India at the time. And yet, it still is sent to Hadrian's Wall near Scotland. There's really, really fun ones with a Roman soldier asking for his parents back at home to send him socks. And the birthday party invitation from quite a higher class lady to another one.
It just reminds us that people are just people. People need socks. People need to
Absolutely.
have parties, whatever they are. I don't know. I forgot me. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. People need black pepper. It's just how it is.
And ale, apparently.
So, as part
Yeah.
of your experimental archaeology and living history demonstrations, you get to work in some amazing centres and places like the Scottish Cranach Centre. What was it like up there?
Awesome. It's really hard to describe, but I really didn't know anything about Scotland a few years back. And I just visited the Scottish Cranach Centre and I keep going back and back every single year, hopefully several times a year. It's a beautiful place. It's a very interesting project and they are developing the centre house. So it's a form of roundhouse on stilts in the middle or in a lock.
Do you feel, Caroline, when you go to these places, and please say yes to this, do you feel like you've gone back in time?
Yes, absolutely, because it's a bit like at events or displays or anything like this when you are staying on the site, arriving before the public and staying after they leave. You have these moments where that's it, you can just sit down, relax, and the only thing you really want to do is to carry on with what you were doing in your historical outfit around a fire, chatting with other people exactly like it would have been done at the time.
In your role as archaeology educator, I understand you do some presentations, Caroline.
Yes, that's a new thing actually. Because everybody is going towards online and virtual content and things like that. All the displays and demonstrations that I say we, me and my partner, but as Pario Gallico do, are usually in museums, on site, at festivals and things like that. So everything that for the moment cannot welcome the public. So for these places, obviously community engagement is very important, and keeping in touch with their visitors. So you have to go online. There's not many, I don't think, other possibilities. And it has been taking quite a lot of different forms. I mean, from Tudor marzipan making videos, demonstrations, for example, that you were mentioning. We will have a few talks as well for Corinium Museum. We have been working with the Solway Coast, AONB, some places I've never thought of before because they are way too far from me down in the south of England. But now that we're online, we actually can work together.
As well as hosting and mothering the Arm Market, George also likes to delve into reenactment herself and has done for many years. Your latest venture is Tastes Through Time. Tell us a bit about that, George.
Me and Mum that sort of own the company, really, or historical interpreters for Mum because she's retiring, or she was retiring at the time. And so it just sort of gave her a little bit of sort of some research to do. So ideally wanting to go into schools, obviously museums as well. We've done quite a few museums since we started up, film and TV. So anything that's available, really.
What's the last museum you went into, please? And what did you do there?
We did the National Army Museum in London. They had a collections day, so we're asking for people to bring in any wartime collections that they might have at home and tell a bit about their story, sort of thing, sort of who it came from and what it was. Did we know and think about the actual history of it? And we were asked to put on a display, a home front display. So we did a massive games display, a make, do, amend, and sort of rationing. So what you would have had around the home, really.
Did you have some really interesting objects the public brought in then? How lovely to see something that someone had salvaged from their own family history.
Yeah, so there's I put one out, which was it wasn't actually part of our own family history, but it was a soldier's payment book, but it was all complete with the actual slip as well, and his Bible and things like that. So I managed to put that in for archiving, really, so that they could take photos of it and measurements and all this sort of thing. There were some really interesting people as well. There was a German lady who discovered that she had postcards from Hitler in her attic.
Wow.
And things, but she can't read it. It's in old German, so she can't actually read what these postcards are about. So
yes, so that's one of the interesting things about reenactment is we can't do it without the public and them being interested in what we're doing. So you don't have to be a reenactor to come to the Arm Market. You don't have to be a reenactor to be at a reenactment. It's about discussing in those stories and people asking questions and helping people really discover the past through our knowledge as reenactors, as well as the artifacts, like you say, you have in front of you. So I saw you cooking the other day, George. Cooking up a storm in the kitchen. What's your favourite recipe to cook then from Tastes Through Time?
Because we do create through medieval through to World War II, so we do lots and lots of eras. One of my absolute favourites isn't actually cooking, it's a Tudor trifle.
I'm in.
And it's absolutely incredible. All it is whipped cream, basically.
I'm doubly in.
It's whipped cream, rose water, nutmeg or cinnamon, and sugar. Only for traders.
Traders only.
Tudor's my forte or my specialism, really.
Is there another time period? I mean, you do a lot. You go all the way through, so you probably do most. Have you done Stone Age? What's left for George to do?
Basically, I've stopped at medieval at the moment, so late medieval, really. I haven't even gone early medieval, but it's like I have been, as you know, I've been interested in doing Viking.
Oh yes, we've got to get you in a dress, a Vike dress.
See, I do all the social domestic side, like the dyeing as well.
Yes.
So it's sort of it's following that back sort of thing, how far back we had the Tudor dye stuff and the medieval dye stuff. So did that go back to Viking? Did it come over with the Vikings? Things like that.
That's one of the fascinating things, is to be able to trace a skill back. Before you know it, you've unpicked something and you're not looking at anything you wear or your curtains, bedspread in the same light again, because you're really appreciating the massive process that goes into making everything we take for granted that we can get from supermarket.
Exactly. And it's even, you can do it the other way, sort of with the medieval cookery and things. And because I do cookery up to World War II, you can follow a recipe down basically and see how it changes and how each era adds its own little tweaks to it. It's like things like a trifle. Obviously the Tudor trifle has no jelly in it, has no sponge in it, but it's not until you get to like the 18th century where they start adding things like jelly and stuff. And then I think it's the Victorians that add the sponge, I think.
And who added the alcohol? That's what I want to know.
I think any grandma, I think, to be honest.
Fill my glass up at the same time.
It was anything like my grandma. She did it so much that the sherry, then she put so much sherry in it that the jelly didn't set. That was my nan.
That's the one. It continues to be a strange future that we're heading into, but we're hopeful that in 2021 there'll be a fireside and there will be open spaces that we can be in safely. Until that time, nice to see you virtually, George, and talk to you virtually.
And you.
You've been listening to a podcast from the Artisan and Reenactors Market. The Arm family welcomes new traders, groups, living history and performers. See the website armarket.uk. All music from this podcast series is provided by A Merry Noise. Find out more about their medieval, Tudor and 17th century music on their YouTube channel and their website amerrynoise.com. Asking the questions has been me, Jen from Drakosdottir, and also Norfolk, to explain the accent. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to your company next time.